still have 10 minutes, right?
Yep.
Yep.
Alright then. I got my mic ready for the event after this, so. At least in my recording, it should be a lot better. Huh? Where's Atlas? Oh, where Atlas is, but
Oh, what broke again? Create.
alright, I'm gonna get my If someone can like yell at me once we're starting, that'd be nice.
Who's talking?
Soul?
Okay.
Yeah, just yell at me once it's time. I'm gonna get my stream ready.
Amy, the sync isn't the problem, don't do it. I remembered what you said. Okay, I fixed it. Where did IMS go? So I think we're down to the last 3 events, and they are consecutive?
Yes.
Yeah, that looks right.
Though the stage will be open during one of them.
What do you mean the stage will be open? Oh yeah, there'll be nobody here.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Once I get my recording already, I'm gonna probably just prepare myself for the next event. IMS, you can't be in adventure mode. You gotta be in creative mode.
Yeah, being creative.
Is this working?
Yeah.
Yes, this is working.
Okay.
Alright, come over here. I say come over here and he goes over there. Right. Buttons here behind the lectern. Also previews your slides. I have no idea if I explained this before, but I don't kind of care. Questions will be here on this screen. You can see the ones from the forum are already here.
Everybody.
First step is to cast fly on yourself and not someone else, like I did, because I'm a fool.
Okay.
And then fly up into the sky and cast all those spells on you and your teammates.
So wait, Feld, but I won.
Yeah, I got killed while I was trying to cast fly on someone else.
Oh.
Yo,
I just went flying and then I just went up in the air and made myself twice size and just...
I would have made myself 0.0001 size.
The minimum is one eighth.
No, it's way smaller than that. I've been smaller than one of these little pixels.
Gee, dude, they might also be in a Discord call.
Where did you go?
Auto talk.
I triggered spawn because I'm trying to set up the stage and y'all are talking over me.
Oh, you triggered spawn on him, on them.
I'm also. In a minute.
Wait, no, I'm stuck. Just, I'm trying to get out of here, but it's being buggy. Can you just teleport me outside the stage?
Or something.
Can you just teleport me outside the stage?
Use trigger spawn.
But I wanna go somewhere nearby.
Well, that's your problem.
There.
IMS.
Yes.
Yeah, so green button will put it up on the screen, and the red one will just delete it, so the smiley face and the X. If it's a long question, you'll want to read it out before you click the smiley face, because it will disappear from the screen immediately and go up there. Capiche?
Sounds good.
Okay. When you're ready to accept questions, this button here in the corner will raise up the hoppers so that people can throw the books in.
Okay.
That's more or less it. I'll be around anyway. You still got another like 5 minutes. Oh yeah, I just do it from unblock. I should really have set up more linked controllers for that. Are you all set up, Lemma?
All set up, yeah. Things are looking pretty good. IMS, can you do a quick sound test?
Hello.
Alright, I'm gonna turn you up just a bit.
Is this better?
A bit, yeah. I just want to have you louder than everything else for the recording, too.
Okay, I'm using an iPhone.
Alright, yeah,
my
perfect volume now. All good.
Microphone isn't working.
Alright, if everyone watching could find a place that they fits and sits in it, that'd be great.
IMS, can you hear me?
Yes.
Alright, you two, whenever you're ready, feel free to get started.
Hold on, wait. We're probably gonna start at 5, like, on the dot. So, like, give us, like, a couple minutes, or, like...
No, you're
1
fine.
minute.
Just whenever you're ready, you're fine.
I need to stop having ideas for mods when I'm not done with the ones I'm already working on.
Yeah, big mood.
The absolute biggest mood. I have too many leftover projects.
Why is IMS still in the voice chat?
IMS, are you there? I don't know if he's dead or not.
Find a seat and sit in it, please.
Okay. Welcome to Open and Why It's Good. Also,
And then... And why?
OpenGL and
shoot.
Why It Sucks.
So... And it also sucks, too. And we'll tell you why that.
The good and the bad.
Okay, so
is the
let's
ugly
get
in there?
started with and why it has all of these limits with OpenGL. It uses the compatibility profile on OpenGL 2.1, which is for 1.16 and lower, and on 1.17 and higher, it uses 3.2 on the core profile. The compatibility profile is a fixed function-based process, which is
So, nowadays, in modern rendering, we have these two... The main two things is... Vertices and fragments. So, fragment, in general... there is a little bit of a, like, reason why they don't just call it pixels. But in general, fragment is just a pixel that is on your screen, and a vertex is just a point in space, and then there can be other attributes tied to it. So OpenGL has been, since 3.2, been pivoting towards pretty much only having everything run through these things called shaders, which manipulates these two types. Now, there are other types of shaders, but these are the main two. So, if you can look at the, I don't know if it's too small or not, but there's a diagram that is sort of like a pipeline where for each step, data will go through this thing, it'll get changed around, then it'll go to another thing, it gets changed around, and then another thing and another thing, and yeah.
Yeah.
okay. So what are shaders? Shaders are the core of modern graphics. They are used per vertex and per pixel, and they run your own programs instead of relying on OpenGL to add them. Modern pipelines require while older pipelines do run without shaders using a fixed function. The fixed function pipeline is rarely used today because of its limitations and because of issues with it, such as not being able to interpolate manually and having a bunch of issues.
So with core shaders, which are the main thing that gets run in 3.2 and above, those are used to actually render terrain, and those like aren't just a sort of layer that's put on top of an existing thing like what would happen in a fixed function pipeline, but in whatever. On the other hand, in a compatibility context, you will have composite shaders that run on top of fixed function and will manipulate them after OpenGL has done its work on it. So from version to version, OpenGL has pivoted towards putting that work on the user rather than itself, so they can optimize it for that, as well as so they can just put less of a workload on their side.
So, attributes are how you store information for specific vertices. The way it works is that you store everything in a buffer, and then use a vertex array object to manipulate the information in it and tell OpenGL how it's going to store it. And then once in pixel context, you use the varying command, and it can convert it and interpolate it to be used in specific pixels. You can do interpolation manually, however, it's better to have OpenGL do it for you.
Okay, so Vertex Buffers. Now, you may have heard of this before. Minecraft used to have a setting for use VBOs. And a VBO, in short, is just a bunch of data on your graphics card, and they're used as vertex data. Now, back before, like, long ago, like around before 08, 07 maybe? Actually, it might have been way before that, like 02, before any shaders were even thought of. What you would do is you would send commands in a thing called immediate mode, where you would just say, okay, put this vertex on the screen, now put this vertex on the screen, now put this vertex on the screen. Each time it would have to go through the driver, then the driver would have to communicate with the GPU. It was very slow, it was very time consuming. Nowadays, and what makes more sense for, you know, stuff like models, is just put all that data in a buffer and then send the whole thing to the GPU. The driver doesn't really have to do much of anything. Now pretty much everything is rendered through VBOs, and that's one of the main roles of Blaze 3D, is to actually just do that compilation itself. Instead of relying on the driver, you just toss everything in a vertex buffer as it's being generated, and then you send that to the GPU, and you don't have to rely on the driver to do stuff.
So, what are VBOs not for? They are not for binding random data for use in a shader, because they have a very strict size limit. You don't want to go above it, otherwise things get really slow really fast. You would want Ssbos for that, which will be explained later. It also is not a way to tell shaders how to interpret vertex data. That is the vertex array object.
Alright, so one of the ways that can be easily done, or not easily, one of the simplest to understand methods for optimization with things like VBOs is with batching and instancing. Now, batching is when you take all of the vertex data around it and you put it all into one, and you have the least amount of changes between them as possible. Because the less you have to communicate with the driver, the better, really. The whole main game with this is that the driver doesn't have to send stuff to the GPU every time you call it. You could just do it once when everything's been put into one big batch. Now, instancing is similar to batching, but instead of doing everything on the CPU, where you create all the buffers and you manipulate all the data, then you put it all in a vertex buffer, you give it one vertex buffer, and alongside it, you give it data to manipulate that, and a bunch of those instances will run. So for example, if I have a bunch of players here, right, in front of me, each one of those players would be an instance of a player model, and then for each instance in between, I would give it, like, because all of you have different skins, I would give it a texture, I would give it different rotations and positions for like arms and stuff, because, you know, you're sitting in different ways. And then I would also give it maybe some other data for how it would be rendered. So that is kind of a successor to instancing, or it's a successor to batching, and it's just a better way to render faster.
So now it's time to talk about modern OpenGL features. These are features that Mojang avoids using to be compatible with devices, but can be very powerful if used right and can provide major performance improvements, which is part of what Sodium does. The first one is Ssbos, which are cellular storage buffer objects. They allow you to create pass a bunch of data in a buffer to shaders and use that data for stuff like instancing. Second thing is direct state access. It allows you to easily create textures and modify other states faster, like creating textures and allocating them as. And the third one is probably the most powerful one. It's called compute shaders. It allows you to run general tasks, not just graphics, on your GPU much faster than you would on the CPU.
Alright, so Sodium. So now that we're both considered Sodium maintainers, now we have to deal with this. So right now, and back in Sodium 0.1, what we did was this thing called multi-draw indirect. Now, this is a method sort of like instancing, but it's even more steps to get the driver to do less stuff. The bottleneck in general is the driver and sending stuff to the GPU. Communication to the GPU is really important, and the faster and more efficient we can do it, the better. So all of Vertex data, every single chunk here, or every chunk in a region, which is 8x4x8, gets put in a Vertex buffer. That whole thing gets sent to the GPU once, instead of like updating a lot, and then it's all rendered in like one draw call. So that's only one communication to the driver that has to happen, because you want the least amount of communication with the driver as possible to get what you want done. And in general, that just speeds it up for most things. Now, one of the problems with this, though, is that it's very modern. So that continues the theme with the more modern it is, the less communication to the driver it is. But unfortunately, the things that would probably benefit from it the most, which is like, you know, old computers, is kind of singled out. It doesn't really have support for it, which is really unfortunate because they probably benefit the most from it. So there's also DSA. Now, it is an optimization somewhat. It's just you don't have to bind things. There's whole concept of OpenGL being a state machine and binding things to work on, and it's really just a pain in the butt. It's really annoying, and this just makes it to where you just send a reference to anything that you want to work on with the command rather than having to bind things beforehand, because that ends up eliminating a ton of different bugs. It ends up just making development faster, and then one of the benefits is that it ends up just making rendering faster, which is just a huge plus.
Okay, so what can we do in the future to make things even faster? Well, what's being looked into right now is full entity instancing, which is being looked into by a few people, notably Burger, and it has many other improvements, and it's generally a success to other things like Iris's entity batching. Translucency sorting, which will be explained in a future slide, and in the far future, possibly during this, however, we think that's unlikely.
Alright, so there's been a lot of talk recently about Vulcan and Minecraft moving to Vulcan. Yeah, it's a lot. So really, a lot of thought has been going back and forth. There's a bunch of different devs that have been considering like different backends and stuff, but the main problem with Vulcan in Minecraft is mods expecting OpenGL. There are many mods that mess with OpenGL and just like raw rendering, and it ruins a lot of compatibility. In 1.15, when Blaze 3D got created and put into Minecraft, a lot of the functions that call to OpenGL were kind of put in this sort of in-between area, which is called render system for Blaze 3D. And we can mess with that all we want, but as long as any mod makes one single OpenGL call, it ruins, it crashes. It just crashes. Like, there's nothing it can do, really. So, avoiding this is almost impossible, right? Like, it doesn't make sense to override them, and we can't override them because we can't mix into libraries. So, another thing that there's a problem with is shaders. Shaders are not the same in Vulcan as they are in OpenGL. Some things work, some things don't. There have been compilers made to sort of go between OpenGL shading language and Vulcan shading language, but there are also these things that rely on old OpenGL, and because Vulcan is so new, it just doesn't understand it. So there's a lot of work that has to go into that for translation, which is kind of a pain, and there are also things that just have incompatibilities that there are no replacements to. So in that case, like, there isn't really anything else we can do. However, there have been some developments on considering making some sort of thing part of Quilt or part of something that would be like a layer that anyone could use that is more abstract than Blaze 3D that could be used to render anything. So everything that would potentially have an OpenGL call would instead use this layer, and we could replace it with Vulcan. But what it's been looking like recently, and even with all of the attempts that have been going on, is that might not come for quite a while, but it is a potential, and it would take a lot of work.
Here's my favorite part. Drive frames.
Oh, your mic is kind of dead.
driver issue.
Unfortunately, IMS is going through some driver issues right now.
Is it working now?
Nope.
No.
Do you have his script, Bunger?
I do, yeah. I can just move on,
Maybe,
honestly, but
yeah, maybe best for you to
I don't
continue
wanna...
while he figures that out.
Sure, that works. Alright.
Testing.
He did experience some driver issues. Oh! Oh.
There we go.
Bro. True.
Okay, so about driver issues. Some drivers just don't care about supporting mods in OpenGL. NVIDIA is the best one, followed by AMD having some major issues, then Intel just blowing up, and then Apple.
So, recently, I did want to talk about this. There was a bug that was put on Apple's bug tracker recently about the blatant, like, non-support of OpenGL, and it was marked as won't fix, which, you know, is a little scary, right? Because many apps require OpenGL and rely on OpenGL and don't have another option to go to other than a full rewrite almost. It is there have been some solutions proposed. There was this one person that was actually working on a metal implementation of OpenGL 4.6, and that could maybe work, but it hasn't really had a ton of work recently, like in the last couple months. Yeah, past 2 months, it's kind of I mean, it's a huge undertaking, so it's not something that can just be feasibly manned by one individual. So one of the alternatives that we can do is go to something like Vulcan, right, or like WGPU, or like Metal even, or, you know, some other backend other than OpenGL, because this isn't going to work for the foreseeable future. So, as I was talking about before, there has been sort of an effort to push towards implementing backends that just normal mods could use to limit incompatibilities, and then there have also been some work on Sodium's end to abstract what they've been doing, so we could maybe work on a Vulcan implementation of Sodium, or a Metal implementation of Sodium, and we could move forward from there.
A small note about the last one. Apple is actually talking to me about the M1 issues.
I didn't know this. Seriously?
Yes. So Sodium 0.5 will not support macOS. Why is that? It's because Apple, as we said, ditched OpenGL support quite a while ago, but it's unrealistic to completely drop support. So what can we do in the future?
So other than are options that we were talking about, this seems like a big contender. Zinc is a Vulcan implementation of OpenGL. Now, there is an existing, already like heavily backed project that goes from Vulcan to Metal, and Metal is pretty much the only thing that Apple wants to support right now. So Vulcan is nearly 100% supported through Molten VK, right? But is it really more strict? Maybe somewhat, but it's not. It's not. It's much, much, much more usable than something like Apple's OpenGL driver that like it partially works. Like anything would be better than that, honestly. So Zinc is a project that's been worked on for about a year now, ish. And one of the main problems is that OpenGL and Vulcan are hugely different, right? They many of their calls, while like states, like things like states are similar. So like you know, if you want to draw with like triangles versus like, you know, a triangle fan or like a triangle strip or something like that, those kind of constants are the same, but the way that things end up being rendered and the way that buffer management works and stuff like that are completely different. It is not a one-to-one thing. So Zinc has been an attempt by a group of Mesa developers to patch that hole that seems to be missing in the rendering ecosystem right now. And it's been seeing some major improvements, really, over the last few months. And hopefully within maybe the next year, that could become an option for us if we find that implementing a new backend is too difficult for us as like a small team. And this would be the pipeline for Minecraft, is to go through OpenGL to Zinc to Vulcan to MultiVK to Metal, and then it would finally render. And Jesus. We hope that that would be with minimal overhead.
It's time to talk about the worst part, translucency sorting. This is the thing that everyone has been complaining about in Sodium for years now, and it is a very hard thing to get right. The issue with it is that regardless of the game, you need to either sort translucent objects or use something called ordered independent translucency, which is a way of compositing a bunch of translucent objects separately and drawing everything at the very end. But that does not work with shaders, which is why it's being avoided.
And then I just want to add that neither of those options are easy to implement. It's very easy to get both of them wrong, and it will definitely be a pretty big undertaking for sure. So yeah, right now what Minecraft does vanilla is it will sort if you move, if you turn the camera, if you change any blocks, anything that is translucent, the entire chunk will be rebuilt and sent to the GPU. It is so slow. It is so slow. So one of the ways that has been proposed with Sodium is just to sort it on the GPU. You don't have to send new stuff to the GPU, and that's kind of one of the main reasons why it hogs so much time. Like, it pauses so much. And while this works, we've been thinking about... Oh, wait, what? You really put... Don't use OIT? Okay, well, I guess that's fair. Considering it as an option, though... What? Yeah, that's fair, yeah. In a environment where, shaders wouldn't be worried about... I just want to talk about this anyway, because it could be an option for non-shader rendering, is, the way it works is most translucency stuff, when it's rendered, it isn't like you can do it in any order. But what you can do in any order is additive transparency, where you basically add the two values together. That can be done in any order. So the base main way that order independent translucency works is it tries to emulate other types of transparency through additive transparency, and it kind of works, but there are definitely problems with it, and it doesn't look good in like side-by-side comparisons, but it's better than if we decided to do nothing at all, because it's a bug that needs to be considered. Yeah, so this is a lot of comments that we get, and a lot of these are very
how about
irritating.
multi-threading? This is why I hate multi-threading. Or why I hate people asking for multi-threading. Because it makes no sense. The reason why it makes no sense is because Minecraft is already pretty multi-threaded. And it doesn't just... You can't just multi-thread something... you can't just multi-thread everything. It causes a bunch of thread issues and
Yeah, so...
and how you access things.
Okay, so me and Cortex have been working on Sodium 4.5 recently, like very recently, like within the past week recently. Right now it requires OpenGL 4.6, and that does kind of restrict a lot of the user base, but honestly it's been kind of we've had a lot of talks about it. We're still not completely sure about it, but it older devices are something that we definitely need to consider. But for now, just for ease of development, because of all the changes and the potential, you know, like because development is moving so fast, we're just gonna stick to 4.6 for now, and we're gonna keep supporting new updates and stuff for 4.1, 0.4.1. 2, my bad. Alright, and then if you have any questions, toss them now. So we have one. Any progress towards max support for Sodium 4.5? And the answer right now is no. It'd probably be in like 4.6 or something. Unless Zinc gets better soon.
So the question that was asked is there anything that mods can do to make it your implementation, to make their implementation of OpenGL easier?
Yes. One, use GL State Manager, don't use main calls, but that's not always a possibility, because GL State Manager is very restrictive. There's only a few, like, there's many calls there that aren't implemented that need to be implemented.
Ezra, no.
And
the
then,
main thing is that I recommend using your own render system. If GL State Manager doesn't provide what you need, make your own.
How have different OpenGL implementations cause development issues? I'm doing that right now. Before this talk, I was working on problems with different different OpenGL implementations. Now, many of the driver creators have tools to debug them. Like, RenderDoc is just one that's just for general, but there's also Intel GPA for Intel. There's, I think, something for AMD, but I haven't looked into it. And then for NVIDIA, there's Insight, and these will give specific details about problems and let you look into what's happening in each frame a little bit deeper than something more general. And it's still a pain. It's a pain. Like, there are chunks that render right now in 0.5 in NVIDIA that just don't render in Intel. It's a huge pain, and yeah. Your Vulcan mod, I think we covered that mostly, but
So any plans for Vulcan graphics mod? As we previously stated, no, we don't believe it provides that much of a benefit to warrant it. Comp.
what do you say?
Complementary reimagined.
When will Kronos update OpenGL? It probably won't. I'm gonna be real with you. 4.6 is probably the last one. I'm gonna not lie. It's kind of dying. 4.6 was released in like 2017. That's 5 years ago already. I don't think they're doing anything. I don't think they're doing a 4.7. I don't think they're doing a 5.0. Yeah.
So how difficult will it be to bite the bullet and do what Apple wants by implementing a metal backend? Would it be best to write this in C++ or Java to minimize dealing with foreign?
So the best way that would happen for supporting metal is if LWJGL had bindings for it. The way that Minecraft communicates with OpenGL and would communicate with Vulcan is they have these things called bindings, which basically go from Java calls to OpenGL calls. And there are none for metal, I don't think, right now. But if there was, it's still just a huge pain. It's slightly less difficult than making a Vulcan implementation. I'll say that. And then there's also things that Minecraft does, like use triangle fans, that metal just doesn't support. So I don't really know what we would do there other than like try to emulate them, but it would require a lot of refactoring to get it working. Bruh.
Okay, my GPU is old, so I don't know if I can even play Minecraft anymore because now it provides OpenGL 4.6. Oh my god.
Yeah, I mean, Sodium 4.0.4 will be maintained for as long as we can until the problem gets looked into more. But I mean, newer Sodium updates probably won't be accessible because, you know, at some point there's a limit to what we can do with older OpenGL implementations, and we're near that limit, really. Progress needs to happen, and I don't think that it makes sense to stay held back when we can just keep one main Sodium version in like a sort of state of maintenance, and then just do our new work that's a bit more restrictive. 2009 is too old, okay? I'm sorry. I'll say it.
Okay, is OIT working with shaders a fundamental issue or something just to do with compatibility? It is a fundamental issue. It can be fixed by changing the shader pipeline and how it works, but can't work with the existing shaders. The reason for this is because shaders can write to their own frame buffer, which means that they we can't depend on compositing things. How much is Frappy being considered, if at all?
Should I do this one? I haven't touched Fabric Furniture API at all yet. I might happen at some point. It is not a priority compared to some other things right now, because, you know, in the end, right now, at least, Indian will continue to be supported, I think. Like, I'm pretty sure, like, I haven't been tracking their development necessarily, but that should be enough for now, because implementing Fabric Rendering API would take a while. It would take a while, and right now, when so many other things about how Sodium renders things are being changed in 0.5 right now, I don't think it makes sense to try and do that until we've sort of hit a state to where we can, like, where the code is a bit more solid, I guess. Yeah, well, Indium got updated really quickly because we didn't make any big changes to Sodium for the 1.19 release. It's just 0.4 but updated, really. Yeah. Why does Apple do this to us? It's probably so they don't have to hire a bunch of new developers, honestly. That's the real reason. Or not hire a bunch of new developers, but just, like, keep having to pay the old developers that are there, that have to, like, write drivers and stuff like that, which driver development's a pain, as it is. Okay, yeah, they are a multi-trillion-dollar company, but, you know, they're profit-focused, and they're just gonna do that. You know, that's how they work.
How is PBR going for Iris, and how does PBR work? PBR is going well. We have test builds on our Discord if people want it. The way PBR works is that it uses vertex attributes provided by us, plus a normal and specular map provided by texture packs. Stitching that normal and specular map is the hardest part.
I feel like Linux, just out of the box, has better support for older GPUs getting 4.6 support in general. So, if your GPU doesn't support 4.6 on Linux, then it probably wouldn't be much better on Windows or macOS anyway. But, if it has, like, shoddy 4.6 support, like some GPUs do that work better with, like, Vulcan, then that could be considered. But, if they just don't, like, if they just straight up don't support 4.6 and they're on Linux already, then I'm gonna be real with you. It ain't looking good. Like, there's nothing you can really do.
Why not abstract the entire Minecraft rendering pipeline with something like BGFX? I actually wanted to make a slide on this, but I thought it would be too much. The reason why we don't believe it's feasible is just because mod compatibility, same as Vulcan.
What do you say? Ooh, so, there are definitely some really good places to learn graphics programming, but, like, Learn OpenGL is good. Yeah, that's really good, but there are definitely some other really good resources for Vulkan. They're all in my bookmarks. I should probably post them somewhere. I should make, like, a gist, or a gist, or whatever. Not gist. So, and, there's also a lot of resources that just come from word of mouth. Like, you can just ask me, in Discord. You could ping me, and I'll, like, give you the, you know, the rundown on a lot of things, because there's a lot of things that you just kind of have to discover yourself when you're working on graphics programming, because it's not a big field necessarily, and a lot of times you'll end up like trying to Google something, or just find something, and the last result is from like someone in 2009 saying, how can I do this, and then it has no responses, and then it's kind of a pain because of it's kind of lack of popularity. So you could probably just ask people in the community and they can give you some good info.
How did you two get started with learning OpenGL? I tried adding shadows to Iris and I failed.
I started with Vulcan because, I started with OpenGL from Minecraft a little bit. I was kind of dabbling in it, but then I started actually writing real rendering code like a year and a half ago when I was working on Blaze 4D, and that was where I then sort of started moving to Sodium development, because I'm like, because by the point that we'd gotten with it to where we just needed new optimizations, I started looking into Sodium, and that was kind of where I learned OpenGL actually.
So, are there backend independent rendering APIs that mods can use instead of Blaze 3D? Technically yes, but realistically no.
There is something in development right now that might... I talked about it earlier. There is this thing called... What's it called? Spectrum, I think. It's either Electrum or Spectrum. Burb sucks at naming things. And it is a potential, if it goes anywhere, and if a lot of support goes to it, it really could be a potential solution to mod compatibility if mods adopt it, and if it has like a strong enough API to where like people will really want to go out of their way to do it, and if Vulcan backends or metal backends or just different backends start popping up and the need is there for people to start actually coding with them, because if there is no need, then people probably won't look into them that much.
Yes.
No.
Would
it's not.
OpenGL 4.6 and Iris improve it, putting Sodium aside? Yes, but not that much compared to Sodium.
Sodium would not be put aside from Iris improvements due to 4.6. 4.6 is like a it's not just a magic solution, and a lot of work has to be put into it, and honestly at that point you might just be re-implementing a lot of Sodium like strategies anyway that Sodium's already done. It's kind of like reinventing the wheel, really. What's the best language to learn graphics programming on? OpenGL, probably. For now,
OpenGL
until something easy comes up, if you don't want an abstraction.
But I recommend using Vulcan once you learn everything about OpenGL and the basics.
If you start out with Vulcan, you will not. It's a pain. It's very painful. Oh, programming language. I read that wrong. Probably not Java, but LWJGL is pretty good. You should probably do like C++ or like Rust, maybe.
They don't.
They don't. They just give you more options, really. Options that don't exist on previous ones that, those options are the main, selling points for why we want to transition between OpenGL versions and the lack of options really means there's like a lack of things that you can really do to like progress, and that's why we update. So yeah. Also, the reason these options actually give us better performance is the main reason is just like, you know, with hindsight, a lot of these changes might seem like obvious now, but you know, you have to think back to the times of like when a lot of, you know, OpenGL was created. I mean, like, when was it made? Like 94, 95? It's a long 96, like, or whenever it was. It's been a while, and you know, they didn't have the knowledge that we do now about how graphics cards will even be created and how they work and stuff like that, and that's just hindsight thing.
How long did it take to make Iris work? Depends what you mean by work. That's
Never.
all the questions we have.
If there's any late questions, feel free to get them in, but there's only about 5 minutes.
Yes, that's all we had. That was a lot of good questions, yeah. Okay, cool.
Alright, cool.
Oh.
Thanks for that.
Wait, do you want to actually ask that? TBO is... Wait, what is a TBO? I don't know. Texture
Suddenly
buffer
tons
object?
of questions.
Ooh! Oh, that is a texture buffer object. They're the same thing. They're the same thing, except they use different APIs. Ssbos are just, like, way easier to work with. Okay, that's it.